is morning. This is what happens in the morning. I get shadows casting straight through the window onto the flip chart, and Wordly lives there, so that's why you can see these strange effects. Today I'm looking at reality gaps. Before I go into detail about things that are going to be involved in these reality gaps we'll talk about, I want to tell you a little bit about a guy called Ludwig Boltzmann. Now, Ludwig Boltzmann was a theoretical physicist who started off his life really very interested in statistics, and he brought his versions of reality to life by combining the theoretical physics and the statistics. He did some collaborations with Maxwell's equations and essentially came up with parameters, and I'm not going to go into today in depth. He died. He died before he could live long enough to see the results of what was happening with his work. Aside from Boltzmann's brains, which is a whole concept in its own right, we've got Boltzmann weights, Boltzmann equation, the numerical Boltzmann code, and Boltzmann distribution. Now, the Boltzmann equation is a Maxwell-Boltzmann equation, also known as, because this is where the electromagnetic era spectrum, this is where the electromagnetic spectrum came in. Anyway, Ludwig Boltzmann also shares my birthday, which is a revelation came upon yesterday when I was looking him up. And the reason I was looking him up was because I suspected that his work had something to do with light cones. Light cones are the scientific description of what happens in the course of the life of a photon. That's why I've drawn a light cone up here, but you can't see it at the moment, so I'm going to come back to that later on. What can you see of this board? Well, you can see this part, but essentially what it's supposed to stand for is the wormhole in which we travel, because we go through this timeline. So our lives are bounded by time. We also travel through this lifetime completely engulfed with light. Light is, one way or another, almost everything that we correlate to. So the photon and light itself has a huge impact on the way we live and the way we perceive things to be. And that's why we come to question what's really going on when we consider the rudiments of quantum mechanics and transpose them as best we can into the foundations of our reality existence. There's a crossover point. So that's what this represents. It represents the chunk of space-time through which you and I are travelling as singularities. As we are, after all unique, singular, individual beings. So therefore we have a singular point within ourselves that corresponds only to us. And this uniqueness goes right through the depth of the world that we know. Every grain of sand is unique. Every blade of grass, believe it or not, is unique. Because the structure, the atomic structure, the placement of things throughout each blade of grass and each grain of sand is slightly different. Same with snowflakes. So how this concept of uniqueness fits in with a force of nature is yet to be determined. It's something that hasn't really fully been explored yet. But it's a big gap in our reality format that I'm not going to really delve into too much here. You're going to be wondering by now what I am going to delve into. So because the time of day precludes me from going into a great deal of detail on what's happening here, we'll see what happens a bit later on. And you can see some interesting diagrams revealing here. Working out which of the diagrams are being drawn by the sun and the photons coming from it, and which of the diagram has been drawn by me, it's a bit tricky at the moment. You can actually just see these tornado looking things here, which represent the time variant on which an incoming particle is travelling. Incoming particles within a Feynman's diagram. This diagram, which you can now see in its complete glory, was drawn originally by my daughter Mary Ann. We've got here the incoming energy and the outgoing energy.
So, thank you, Mary Singer, plus same planet fail.
Because these energy spins are feeding into each other. Talking of feeding, somebody's just come down and started pecking around down here. And as you've gathered, he really likes to get involved with these little camera sessions and sit on my hand here and take notice of what he's doing in the screen. It's mirror of his horns, and then he goes and flies off again. This description of how the energy flow works, therefore, gives us a crossover point all the time in which the creation process is working. Given that the annihilation of electrons, photons, given that the annihilation process of photons and electrons and all the other particles that get involved in annihilations are creating a continuous flow of time energy, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. This is the reality tunnel. We move through this reality tunnel all the time, obviously. We exist on a world line, and the world line that we have, not on the keyboard, the world line that we have takes us entropically through from the present to the future. We can't reverse it and go back to the past. We know from the behaviour of particles that that's exactly what happens. Particles meet and cross us. And so the continuous process of cyclic time occurs. And we are going through this cyclic time continually. The last diagram down here represents what happens to a neutrino. Neutrinos are really important particles, and I have no doubt whatsoever that they're going to be pretty critical in determining ultimately the nature of our reality and how the universe operates, its communication systems, its information exchange. There is going to be a lot to come out of the woodwork regarding neutrinos, but at the moment we do know that they oscillate. So they change from one flavour to another as they fly, and this flavour change turns them from one mass to a different mass, to a different mass, continuously. So I've illustrated here a smaller version of the neutrino, say a muon neutrino, and it's oscillating into a big thing. Now the biggest it can get is a tau neutrino. That's as big as it can get. Now if you look at neutrino in hierarchy, inversion hierarchy, there's also the argument that
The big heavy ones are in fact much lighter, correspondingly
lighter. There's some kind of symmetry here between heavy and light. It's wordly on my keyboard again. Come here. You can't see yourself. Come on. There you go. There, you can see, look, you're in there now. There you are, see? There, that's you. Yeah. That's wordly. Should get my mirror ready. You love that. Go on, you go and sit over there. So this oscillation, trying to get back to my train of thought here, is varying the mass of the neutrino. We don't see oscillation happening. We don't know how exactly it happens. Only it stands to reason that the neutrino, just like everything else, is spinning as it flies. It's not a static aeroplane-like object, one horizontal plane. No, that doesn't work. So it's spinning, and as it's spinning, this energy shift, this mass energy quotient shift, keeps happening. This is our reality tunnel, and we experience shifts all the time in how we feel, what's happening around us, the things that we're doing, and the choices that we're making and the determination of the events that are coming towards us in order for us to have to make decisions upon them is a continuous loop system circuit. That's where our reality stands, and rather than asking where the laws of physics might break down on this kind of line of thought, we've got to ask where the laws of physics come in. Where do the laws of physics come in to make this reality tunnel explainable? A proper version of explained reality. We're getting there. We're heading towards that point, and with all the input of thought and ideas, discussions, have these kinds of discussions with your mates when you have a drink, when you're sitting down in somebody's lounge. Have these discussions, talk about reality, see what comes of your own thoughts, because information doesn't have a ticket signing in system. Information can come to anybody. It's a free radical. You don't need a doctorate to get information. Have a rummage around in the Quantumology vault. There's quite a lot of videos there already to have a look at and see what interests you. And don't forget that as we go further back in time,
I'm getting nearer and nearer to this stuff.
and the very, very first video that I ever made was quarks. And ironically, or synchronistically, whichever way you like to look at it, quarks was the very first subject on my personal agenda when I was first being dragged into learning about quantum mechanics. So there's a thing. So it's goodbye from Wordley. Goodbye. Say goodbye. And it's goodbye from me. And thank you very much for watching. Really enjoyed having your company here today. In the meantime, before I see you again, take care, have fun, love you loads. I'll see you later. Bye.